Take a look at this. That huge passenger yard the Blue Comet steamer's passing over has 23 tracks. And see that wire disappearing in the smoke above the engine? That's fully functional catenary. This is the handiwork of Marty Fitzhenry.
My first trains I got, my parents tell me I was 2 years old. Of course, those days I don't remember. I do remember picking up on having a love for the trains as we got into the preschool years. I live in a railroad neighborhood. The New Haven-Reedville car shops were right down behind where we're at today. And, my parents didn't have a lot of money when I was growing up. As a result of that, on Sundays, we'd go watch trains. And, I got quite familiar with trains and, developed a liking for trains. Would see the real trains. I'd come home and I had a 4x8 layout that I would run my own trains.
Marty's imagination transformed that little 4x8 railroad into a transcontinental main line. His interest in trains started there, but the seeds of that interest were sown even before he was born.
During World War II, my mother worked for the New Haven Railroad welding handrails onto steam locomotives while my father was away at war. Prior to that, her father was on the New Haven Railroad wrecking crew. He was in charge of a wrecking crew out of the Reedville car shops. And, there's always been somebody in the family that's been involved in railroading. My big thing, I would live with my aunt and uncle in Pennsylvania every year and in the summers. And my uncle was a huge train guy. At that time, I was introduced to the GG1, which to this day I still have a great love for the GG1 locomotive, which I have several of on my layout here. I have a mild recollection of the end of the steam era. Watching trains here in the Reedville area, there was one train my parents always referred to as the bullet train that would be coming in late in the day heading towards Boston. And as time has gone on, my mother knew what it was, and I actually got to see the I-5 Hudson running live. Now, that tells you how old I am.
Marty grew up at a time when passenger trains were still a very popular and important way to travel. Living near Boston, which is the northern terminus of the Northeast Corridor, he saw a lot of passenger trains.
All my train watching, be it here on the New Haven or on the Pensy, that's what we saw, high-speed passenger trains. And, I always wanted to duplicate that. I do have some freight cars on the layout. I have a train full of Pensy hopper cars, and I actually saw that train run many, many times in Pennsylvania with the dual box cabs and the black hopper cars, and I've duplicated that train just out of nostalgia.
For Marty, holding on to that nostalgia was a driving force in his approach to building his model train layout. He started by planning the basement.
Spent a lot of time preparing the basement. I wanted it to be the ultimate train room. As a result of that, I had finished plastered ceilings. I have only one lally column, which I needed by code. I have a steel beam in to hold the house up. And when I designed the house, I had to keep the front steps and foyer up an extra foot because I had pre-planned on having the ability to run the main lines under the foyer, which I did, and to this day it's worked out perfect.
Before he started construction of his layout, Marty reached out to seek some advice and counsel from a fellow modeler.
Before I started the layout, I had a long talk with a good friend of mine, Tom Groff, owns the Choo Choo Barn in Pennsylvania. And he asked me, he says, how long do you want to have the track up without having to do anything to it? And I told him, as long as I can live, right? As a result, the test of time, the track work has been up for a lot of years. It's still dead perfect. No rust, no rot. I've got probably hundreds of thousands of screws holding the tubular track into the homosote. To this day, I've never had one screw back out of the homosote. I mean, I've seen layouts that have gotten torn down time and time again. Geez, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. I wanted to do it once and only once, and that way you can keep marching forward. And then I got very, very lucky and met this, he calls himself a good-looking guy, Steve Brunison who is, we know, is the owner of Ross Custom Switches. So Stevie started making me switches, and these things weren't good, they were perfect. And to this day, they're still perfect. And again, thank you, Steve, for, building the switches. I paid him, of course.
The Ross switches and tubular track on Homoso provide a solid foundation for the trains to run on. But Marty wanted more.
I have always wanted catenary on the layout. Again, having watched the Pensy many times, and it just always captivated me seeing those GG1s flying by at probably close to 100 miles an hour. And I always wanted catenary. So I played around with different things with, dowels. I've used N-gauge track, HO track, O-gauge track, spring wire, welding rod, you name it, I've tried it. The one thing that I kept coming back to always was the Marklin HO catenary. It was oversized for HO, but pretty much on the money for O-gauge. I come up with a pole that I thought was very, very good. It's a piece of 1/4-inch key stock steel, and the base is 1 1/4-inch steel. I have a friend who has a fabrication shop, and we made up a jig to hold the bases and hold the verticals in place while we welded them. The cross arms were made out of basswood. It's my own design. Again, it's not very prototypical, but I have a toy train layout. That worked out good for me. I made up cross arms, all approximately 3.5 inches to be cut down as needed, to go over the track. On the top of the poles were caps that come off the Lionel 153 block signal. So I always liked that look, and with the cap on the pole, to me, always looked like something Lionel could have made in the 50s. What I was achieving was 100% functionality, and I have 100% functionality. There are no sparks on the wire, there's none of that. Every locomotive with a pantograph on the roof is taking power from the overhead wire. There are no rollers on anything that has a pantograph. Every one of the pantographs had to be, resprung. You needed a little bit stronger springs, but not strong enough that the MTH operating pantograph mechanism would, work properly. To this day, I have to say it works perfect. There are no problems with it. I've had people run trains for a long period of time and not realize that it was actually coming from the overhead wire. It's been something I spent time on. I put my heart and soul into working on it. A lot of work, not a lot of money but a lot of work. The wire today you can get, it's readily available on the internet. You might find a lot of hobby shops, big HO suppliers might still have it. Just do a search on Marklin catenary wire, and that'll pop you up every site that you can go to.
Running under catenary is a very unusual sight on any model railroad, but Marty has made it work absolutely flawlessly. There's another spot on Marty's layout that's just amazing, and that's right here at the Roundhouse. There are 41 tracks around this turntable, and they are all 100% functional. Laying out the control panel for all these tracks posed a difficult problem, but Marty found a unique solution.
I ran into an engineer that had a giant protractor. I borrowed it, laid it across the tracks, and make notes of every single center rail, okay? Degreed the whole thing, and then I got a smaller kid's protractor, put it on the map using the same degrees, put my track indicator, the next one, it come out perfect. Just, a little bit of luck, a little bit of whatever, but it worked, it come out good.
Just across the main from the Roundhouse is Marty's passenger yard.
The passenger yard is 23 tracks. One end of it is a model of South Station in Boston, which back in my early days at York I bought from Tom Kerrigan. Several of the tracks are under catenary. It's a completely working yard. I have uncoupling magnets on all the tracks. I have full capabilities to bring any engine in and out. What I do, I'll store trains there, then bring an engine in, hook up to them, pull forward, hook up to whatever section of the train I want to pull out, and it's worked very, very good for me.
In addition to this big station, there are 3 other passenger stations on the layout. This one, on the upper loop, is set in Pennsylvania Amish country, with the TCA Museum in the background. That Corvette looks exactly like Marty's. This station was also built by the late Tom Kerrigan. It's a suburban station in the Pennsylvania Railroad style. This station was kit-bashed from 3 MTH bank buildings. Under the platform is another passenger yard, always full of trains. This station, also on the upper line, was built by Alex Millay. It's a representation of the 30th Street station in Philadelphia. Nearby, Marty has built a small city setting that really looks great at night. Several Miller Engineering signs capture your attention in this neat city scene. The entire upper line, including 4 sidings, all have catenary. It crosses over the South Station yard and enters a curved bridge. It's a curved bridge with catenary that lifts up. Now that took a little time to figure out, but Marty made it work. While running under the wire is certainly a focal point on Marty's layout, there's a lot more running here than just a few electric locomotives. Now that his layout is essentially complete, these are good times for Marty. But things were not always so good.
Back in 1980, for reasons I got divorced, and I had to sell my original train collection, which was probably 5 times what I have today, going back to pre-war, post-war, the whole 9 yards. As a result of that, my good friend Charlie Rowe told me, he says, if you want to get started back in again, for 1 year, I will sell you everything you want at my cost. And to this day, I will never forget Charlie Rowe for giving me that opportunity. You know, I was back on track again, so to speak, and everything was going good. And I started buying trains. In the meantime, you keep going to train shows, and there's always something that just kind of reaches out and grabs you as you're walking by.
After recovering from the divorce and getting himself back into trains, Marty was dealt another blow in 2012.
I got diagnosed with extremely bad prostate cancer, which, you know, meant I had to have everything out, and, you know, all the therapy and radiation and that went with it, which, you know, none of it was pleasant. I got great support from OGR forum members. Many of them would send me private emails. Many of them would send me open wishes on the forum. I credit the support, the friendship, and the help I got from the OGR forum members for making things happen, and I'm still here today. And I hope to be here for another little bit. And thank you again, everybody. It's appreciated.
After recovering from the bout with cancer, Marty took the training needed to become an authorized MTH and Lionel repairman. He repairs hundreds of trains every year here in his basement shop. He also enjoys the new technology emerging in the hobby.
I believe the current apps by both Lionel and MTH are going to be a bridge to bring younger people into the hobby. They're very interesting. I have both. I run both. I was chosen as one of the beta testers for the MTH DCS app, and that completely blows you away. I mean, I come down now, if someone wants to come down and see trains run, I don't go for the DCS remote, I go for the tablet. That's how I run trains today.
For Marty, the hobby has been a source of stress relief, especially before he retired from the force.
I was a police officer. I crossed paths with either other cops or bad guys. Having worked in the police department, I worked in the drug unit. The people I had to deal with on the street were not very good people. And I've seen some things that were, very disturbing, and it would disturb pretty much any person. To me, the trains have been my outlet. If I had a terrible day at work, a night at work, I come down and I run trains. I try to unwind. The trains have been sort of a non-professional therapy for me. They put me at ease, they relax me, and I just like to share them with anybody else. Owning something that other people would have an interest in is of no use unless you share it. I have many train nights. I have people just stopping by out of the blue, people calling me, and if I can't help them, or if I'm not home near any of my notes or anything, I tell them, look, throw it on the OGR forum. You're going to find your answer there. There are good people on there that can help you, and that's a resource that everybody should use.
Marty gladly fields all those phone calls because the concept of sharing is a driving force in his enjoyment of the hobby. He and his live-in girlfriend, Dottie Perry, who's just as interested in the trains as Marty is, run trains often, usually with visitors at the house. Marty's willingness to share his knowledge and his layout have earned him the unofficial title of O-Gauge Ambassador. It's the perfect title for a guy who truly is a wonderful ambassador to the O-Gauge hobby.